Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our Franklin University Leadership Center offering. Today, we're delighted to have Oyauma Garrison join us and to present on his topic. Oyauma serves as the president and chief executive officer at Maryhaven Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that helps individuals and families lead healthy lives free from addiction and mental health challenges by providing education, treatment, and support. Prior to joining Maryhaven, he served as the national president and CEO for A Kid Again. He grew the organization from one state to all 50 states, plus DC, in less than 5 years. Active in the community, Oyama has received numerous awards for leadership and community service. He received an honorary doctorate from Franklin University in 2019. In 2021, Oyama received the Denison University's highest alumni honor, an alumni citation. He currently serves as Director Vice Chair on the board of Buckeye Mutual Insurance Company and board member of Oliveron. He has served as an executive in residence for both Franklin University and his alma mater, Denison. A proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and St. Mark's Lodge Number 7 Prince Hall Masons. Oyama earned his bachelor's degree from Denison University and his MBA from Franklin University. And we are just delighted that he took the time to join us on this morning. So at this time, we're going to ask Oyama to put up his PowerPoint presentation. And I will remind you that, or share with you that all questions can be put into the chat and we will entertain those questions at the end of his presentation. Thank you once again, Oyama.
Well, good morning, and thank you again, Dr. Bowen and Franklin University for this wonderful opportunity to be able to share a few remarks relative to something that is near and dear to all of us who are in the workforce today. I'll start by saying that I actually have 3 screens in front of me. So if you're looking at me while also the PowerPoint presentation and you see me glancing off, it's because I have 3 screens in front of me like I am a day trader. So all the fun things that we do in the Zoom world. So with that, let me just take a quick moment and take us back to a point in time when the job market looked a little different than it does today. So how many of you can subscribe to this? If you could go ahead and find me 150 candidates, that'd be great. Think about it. About 5 to 7 years ago, which doesn't seem like a very long time, but in the workforce world, it kind of is. You could literally find 20 to 100 candidates for any general position that exists out there. We're talking about a point in time when it was considered an employer's market. Now, fast forward, yes, we know that we've gone through a lot in the past 3 years relative to the pandemic and so many other changes and innovation that has taken place that we find ourselves in a new world. And that new world, small businesses have reported that since the pandemic, 97% of them have seen high employee turnover. During April of 2020, unemployment rates skyrocketed to well over 15% on national average. These are record highs that we've seen over the past several years. In fact, I know some of you out there who are very near and dear to the restaurant industry, retail industry, hospitality, and even those of us that are tied to the healthcare sector, we have seen quite a bit of significant turnover due to a number of variables and factors. So what does that mean? That means that as we continue to advance forward, we're now really deeply seated in what we like to call an employees market. So in 2020 and 2021, we saw the tides continue to deepen in favor of this employee market. Arguably, you can say that a lot of this was due to the pandemic, as people found a new balance in their life, or in some respects, as we've seen in a number of surveys, people started to question what exactly is it that they believe that they're achieving in their current work environment or their current career path. And I often come back to, some of you have read the book by Simon Sinek, The Why. So why? Why am I doing this? Why is this important? We've also seen over the past few years a surge in the number of new careers and paths and job opportunities that exist. Who knew? Uber and Lyft. In fact, I actually have a friend who is one of those social media influencers that's making somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10,000 a month just by having people follow her on social media. Software developing, gaming. For those of you who are in the Central Ohio market, you probably didn't know there's actually a gaming location that is near the Easton Center where they're actually paying people 7 figures to come in and participate in the gaming environment. Cybersecurity, online stores, a number of people have popped up with Pinterest stores, Amazon stores, and yes, even eBay. So when we're talking about trying to find talent, let me tell you, it is truly, as this cartoon reflects, the candidates are interviewing the employers. Here in the state of Ohio, and even on a national average basis, we've seen these numbers relative to the unemployment market continue to drop. The dark line, as you see on the graph, represents the Ohio unemployment rate from November 2020 to November of 2022, continuing to hover around just about a little bit over 4%. The national average, even as of today, with that yellowish mark, as you can see, the national unemployment rate is right around 3.5%. These are new markets and times that we are in. And I love this meme here that I want to share. Yes, I know it says pay rise instead of pay raise, but imagine when the boss says, we can't afford that pay raise he wants or that she wants. And the HR manager replies, then we should pay it. What? Why? Ask the boss. HR replies, if we can't afford the increase, then we can't afford to advertise, interview, hire, pay, and train that person's replacement. Yes, the cost of keeping your staff is significantly less than the cost to replace them. One recent research study shows that overall cost of employee turnover in the US alone is somewhere around $630 billion on annual. Imagine that, $630 billion. It takes just somewhere around a third of that employee's salary just to go out and do all of that recruiting, that advertising, the replacement, the downtime. And in fact, depending on the nature of the industry you're in, you may see that gravitate quickly all the way up to about 60%, if not higher. Wage inflation has also been playing a factor as we think about the employment transition today. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, wage income for civilian type jobs from 2017 to 2022 increased from what used to be a 2.25% average to over 5%. And in the private sector, well above 5%. So all of these are variables that are contributing to what we're seeing today. Replacing an employee can cost anywhere from 30 to 60% of their salary. And according to SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, it can also be anywhere from 90 to 200%, depending on the nature of the position, the individual's expertise, and let's just face it, the industry. And two big factors that are pushing on that cost: downtime. You'll notice on this screen, this is not an all-inclusive list, but it's to give you some insight as to what we are seeing that is driving some of the significant costs for replacement. Did you know, according to the Society for Human Resource Management, the time to fill a position used to be upwards to 41 days. Today, the average time to fill a position can take up to 6 months. And that depends again on the nature of the position. If you're going after executive level positions, it can take up to 9 months. Employers are finding ways to compete in this competitive market. And I will tell you, what we're seeing as some of the trends is they're shortening the interview process. What used to take 30 days, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months to complete an interview, they're now shortening down to less than 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And in some cases, same day interviews, same day offer. We're seeing the tides continue to change. We're also seeing job postings being streamlined. And I'm sure some of you are hearing, even the job requirements themselves are starting to shift. There are some tech jobs out there that no longer require a 4-year degree, that don't even require a tech degree. It's, do you know some of the basic principles, and institutions are hiring them and training them in accordance to the business need. So that brings us to this conversation around talent retention. Practices, any and everything that you can think of. When we think about talent retention, it is what we are implementing that keeps, and I will emphasize this, top talent and skilled employees within the organization. And I will tell you that talent retention is not about retaining all employees. It is about retaining your top talent, your key talent, and key individuals in the organization. And why? We'll talk a little bit about that later, why some attrition is actually good for an organization. So when we look at this slide, 1 in 3 workers left their job because they feel their employer did not care about them. These are the times that we're in. And when they're leaving, some of them are going to other employers and some are not. Some are taking the proverbial break. Retention rates nationally, best in class, are generally around 90%. So when you're looking at a best in class company or organization, you will notice that their retention for that company is usually hovering around 90%. But most business sectors outside of best in class typically range anywhere from 40 to 60%. Higher turnover rates typically are in the following industries. Retail. Retail turns over about 60% of their workforce. Leisure and hospitality typically turns over 80% of their workforce in annual. In education and health services, somewhere around 40%. We know that there's a growing demand out there for nurses. There's a higher demand even out there for those in the social services space. The one area that we're finding that retention and turnover have kind of stayed steady even throughout the pandemic is the government sector. Turnover rates in the government sector still hover right around 18%. That means they're retaining well over 80% of their workforce. Public-facing jobs typically find the most level of stress and pressure. And what we have seen is that companies who are finding ways to reduce some of the exhaustion, the mental health burdens, if you will, on their workforce are winning. So what is talent retention? Well, talent retention is basically, as we look here on this slide, it is an art and a science. And I will share with you, there is no one magical solution when it comes to talent retention. In fact, if there were, everyone would be doing it. Talent retention is an art and a science of understanding your organization, understanding your company, understanding the existing workforce, understanding the pipeline that will eventually come to be a part of your company or organization. And here's what I will tell you. It's about adopting, adapting, and evolving. Your company will continue to succeed as an art and a science of connecting with the future pipeline, existing base, and your future customer needs. Is it costly? No. Talent retention is not costly. In fact, it is the opposite. There's that phrase that it is cheaper to keep them than it is to actually go out and solicit. What I will share with you, the cost structure is highest on trying to go out and recruit new talent, as we saw in previous slides. Talent retention has also been known to strengthen organizations. How and why? Through continuity of knowledge, through team building. Let's just face it, in a number of industries, especially those that are in sales orientation, individuals like to be able to recognize familiar faces. So when there's an opportunity to continue to have that level of continuity and partnership, it's a success factor. But I will tell you, as you'll see, it is not employee driven. Talent retention is an all-in. That means senior leadership has to be involved, the frontline leaders have to be involved, and employees. Everyone has to have a seat at the table. Everyone needs to be able to express what is important to them, and in fact, keep it aligned around the mission and the vision and the values of that particular company. What I will tell you is that the gold watch conversation still percolates out there. So it is both a fact and a myth because it is generated by generations. There are still a significant number of baby boomers in the workforce today. And yes, they want their retirement gold watch opportunities. However, when we talk about the newer generations, Gen Y, Gen Z, they're not even focused on retirement. And so we're going to talk about that here as a variable to talent retention. What you also see is a number of variables associated that impact talent retention. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is a list that is ever evolving. What I will share with you is a number of studies out there would suggest that even some of the options that you see here, whether it's culture, engagement, development resources, training, it varies by generation. And some of them are yesterday's requirements and not necessarily tomorrow. Geography. As a result of the pandemic, we've learned that we can employ people who are in some respects continents away and still be able to deliver the same level of quality and service and not miss a beat. The ways of yesterday for geography and certain other benefits are yesteryear. What we're seeing is a need for more work-life balance. What we're seeing is more benefits and more corporate goodwill. Talent retention across generations. Baby boomers are still re-entering the workforce, but at a much lower rate and primarily driven by retirement plans. The Great Retirement, as it is called, is what we're seeing right now. The Great Retirement is being led by all of those baby boomers for the most part. The Pew Research Center shared that a record 29 million baby boomers exited the workforce between 2020 and the early parts of 2021. That's 29 million baby boomers exited the workforce, thus leaving a gap still to be filled. They're estimating by 2030, which is just a short 7 years away, another estimated 75 million baby boomers will have retired. That's going to leave a void depending on the nature of the positions and opportunities that exist out there, but it will certainly be an opportunity for those who are ready to backfill. In fact, it is suggested that the Great Retirement is expected to far exceed, in terms of sheer number, the Great Resignation that many of us have witnessed. So where are workers going? What I will tell you is some of them are not entering into the traditional jobs, as we've heard before. We know people are starting their own fitness centers. We know people are doing the social media components. They are finding alternative ways to live their lives and to certainly find new streams of income. So what does that mean? That means that industries, and including the government sectors, are trying to find creative ways of funneling funds to certain types of career paths to ensure that we do not have a significant gap. In the insurance industry, they're actually pumping in millions of dollars to go in and work with middle school and high schoolers to get them to think about careers in the insurance industry. Even here in the great state of Ohio, there's funding that's coming down to help people better identify careers in the social services sector, to be able to help people who are being challenged with mental health crisis and so many other things and career opportunities that exist. But what I want you to also focus in on is in this talent retention, notice the variables that are so uniquely different in what the generations are looking for. Gen X, they're looking at achievement in that orientation, whereas millennials, their only desire is to be challenged. So we've got to think about this new workforce and how do we engage them. I will tell you on the talent retention side, what you see on your screen, money, retirement, benefits, geography, and promotions are all historical retention levers. Yes, they still play a variable depending on the nature of what your workforce looks like, but what we're seeing is a shift. And on this next slide, that shift is so multifaceted, but culture still remains core. And a number of the research and data that has come out of not only the Pew Research Center, but Bureau of Labor and Statistics and so many others, is that culture still remains core among all of the generations. And yet what we're seeing is this increase in wanting to understand how companies operate when it comes to corporate responsibility or social impact. They want to know, is the company meeting their personal needs? If you want to retain an employee, I will tell you, there are companies out there now who are offering financial advisors just to their employee base. There are companies out there who are offering in-house mental health support. There are companies out there who are engaging in trying to find creative avenues around childcare and to be able to support the efforts of their employees. The one variable that is not changing is alternative work arrangements, that flexibility. Companies are winning when they are more flexible in how they're designing out that engagement with that future workforce. Whether it's working 4 days a week, whether it's working remote from home, 100%, 60%, whatever that breakdown happens to be, this is of demand. And believe it or not, we are seeing data to support that employees are willing to take pay cuts to get these level of options to balance out their lives. Myth: high unemployment means high employee retention. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. What we're seeing with unemployment is that people are moving to new career options. So what does that mean for you and the business that you lead? If you are a leader for a company, if you are a human resources practitioner, if you are a small business owner, you have to have a talent management strategy. And that talent management strategy is all about retaining what is called that good top talent that leads to that positive outcomes for your organization. So what does that look like? Your strategy must also include considerations for multiple generations. What I'll share with you is this is a conversation for another day, which is how to manage a much more complex workforce that is made up of 5 generations in some spaces, right, in your workforce. But today, we're branching across minimum 3 to 4, where we've got baby boomers all the way to Gen Z in the workforce, in your company, in your organization, many of them with different expectations. And so how do you retain the tacit knowledge? How do you transfer that wealth? How do you transfer that information to that new employee base while at the same time retaining top talent, because it is an incredibly competitive market? Well, I will tell you, baby boomers are still looking for the basics, being it job security. Gen X, considering themselves a sandwich generation of having to take care of those who are retiring out as baby boomers, while also taking care of their children and themselves are finding themselves kind of still right there in that tension moment. And they're still very much focused on benefits, very much focused on compensation and work-life balance. Whereas Gen Y is all about career development. They want flexibility. They also want to be challenged and know that they're making a meaningful difference. And Gen Z, very new and entering into the workforce, I will tell you, there's one key word on there that stands out. This generation only knows the internet, social media, and modern technology, but they're also very much focused on autonomy. And how do you manage that and provide that to retain them? I will tell you, Richard Branson said it best. Train people well enough so that they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. What we're seeing in terms of trends and best practices, this is not an exhaustive list, but here's what we're seeing. Sign-on bonuses are skyrocketing. We're seeing companies out there who are getting into the space of offering coaches and mentors to be able to attract and retain talent. I'll tell you one that's up here that's really interesting is pet insurance. What we're finding is companies that are branching out and offering alternative benefits are actually getting feedback that would suggest that their employees are willing to stay with them because one, they view that their employer is listening to them. And then two, they're providing options that meet their needs. So for those that may not have children, but maybe they have fur babies, pet insurance, believe it or not, is skyrocketing as an option. Recognition still remains key. So taking those moments where you're recognizing an employee, genuinely recognizing them for their contributions, still remains a top contributing factor for why employees stay where they are. So what does this mean? This means that you also need to create a talent pipeline. So in creating a talent pipeline, that's looking at how can you allow employees to see their future in your organization? So some questions that you might want to ask yourself. What are the growth opportunities in your company? What is your company doing to ensure that talent is being developed for success? What are the needs and the wants of your workforce? And if they're reasonable, can you meet them? Can employees clearly see how their work contributes to the success of the company? And does your company offer special projects and opportunities for inclusion? Talent retention system is absolutely critical for any company today to be able to compete and to survive. It used to be that you needed to have a business continuity plan. And in that business continuity plan, there was usually a small paragraph or maybe a page or two, depending on the size of the organization, that would suggest how do you backfill key talent in the organization. What I am here to tell you is just as you would have to put in effect a potential business continuity plan, every organization, every company, no matter its size, needs to have a talent retention strategy, plan, program, and system. Why? And you want it ultimately to promote loyalty, longevity, and one key word in there too, ambassadorship for your organization. But please keep in mind that some attrition is good, because you also want to make certain that you're inviting in new innovation, new thoughts, and new diversity and perspectives. And your employees are also challenge you to make certain that those who are no longer actively engaged in the organization, that you are taking the proper steps to ensure that they find themselves going somewhere else. So why is this all important? CFO asks the CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? Well, as a CEO, I will tell you, what happens if we don't and they stay? Your decisions around a talent retention program is so critically important. So let's talk about what does it look like in action. This means the meeting and the conversion of policies and programs that then enact itself into what is called the loop or the D4. So it is not uncommon to hear of companies that have policies and or programs that are dormant. Policies or programs that are laying on the shelf that are not in action, that could be benefiting the employees' engagement and retention factors for the organization. And we as leaders and practitioners have to lean in and review these policies as often as possible. According to the Society for Human Resources Management, the employee handbook should be reviewed no minimum than 1 year and no greater than 2. So all that simply means is you should always be reviewing all the policies and practices in your employee handbook. And in fact, it is suggested that over the past 3 years, you're going to always see some level of a turnover relative to your employees' engagement and its force. So reviewing those policies help make certain that it stays current and relevant. So what do those policies look like? Not going to go through all of these. This is just to give you a short glimpse into what exists out there today. Not all inclusive, but here's what I will tell you. A lot of the research would suggest that retirement plans still remain number one for baby boomers and for Gen X. But a lot of the newer employees who are coming to work at your organization, they want to know your corporate social responsibility plans. They want to know who you're investing in. And if you do not give back into the community, you will lose out on some of your talent. They also want to know, are you willing to make investments in their mental and physical health and wellness? What we also are seeing is we're seeing great strides being taken in military leave policies and opportunities to ensure those who serve this country have an opportunity to continue to foster their own professional and personal development and growth in the private sector. Programs. So the alignment around programs. There are a number of programs that exist out there today, but here's what I will tell you. The data suggests that if you focus in on this number one retention strategy and program option, you will actually see far greater retention of top talent. And do you know where that starts? It actually starts with onboarding and orientation. Every survey out there that has taken place would suggest the true moment for retention starts the minute that employee shows up to your company or organization. And it is, what does the onboarding and orientation process look like? If they believe and feel like you're investing in them from day one, you have a greater opportunity of retaining that individual in the long term. Finally, innovation is paramount. So when we talk about programs, there's one on here that I think a lot of people tend to overlook, and it's called stay interviews. And a stay interview simply is an opportunity. This is not a survey. This is not the employee engagement survey. This is an opportunity when human resources, frontline leader, or senior leadership sits down with key employees and top talent in the organization and engage them in a healthy, meaningful dialogue around where do they see themselves? Do they still see themselves as being a valued, contributing member of the organization? And how can we continue to help them advance themselves at the company? Having those healthy conversations allows for innovation, allows for opportunities to be able to provide more innovative policies, programs, and resources to retain, or better yet, just to simply recognize a top talented individual in your organization. So again, not an exhaustive list, but several programs out there, and all of these programs have ranked in the top 5 to top 10 for many of the workforce surveys that have been completed. So what does this mean? The loop, the D4. As you look at this slide, I want you to take away this key option, and that is to understand that this is a cycle. And in this cycle, it simply means that we should always be looking at the design elements, how we engage our employees and our leaders in this process of talent retention, most importantly, to execute on it, not to design it out and have it sit on the shelf, and then to evaluate, an absolutely critical component of the process. Evaluate to make certain that it is meeting the objectives and the needs as it was originally designed, or to evolve it and shift it in accordance to where it needs to go. This is a continuous, perpetual loop that every organization will find themselves in when it comes to talent retention. There's a number of resources that exist out there. Robert Half has the 14 effective employee retention strategies. There is a doc system that is out there from Aileron. What I will tell you is it's all about what is the business system that is in play, what is your retention strategy that is in play that ultimately will help you win. The same at Franklin University. I cannot underscore this one enough. You do not have to be in human resources. You do not have to have a graduate degree to enroll in any of their credentialing or micro-credential courses in order to be able to learn these new opportunities for talent management and talent retention. The Society for Human Resources Management provides a number of key brochures, booklets, and in fact, they also provide a workshop around talent retention intentionally designed to help those who are in the human resources space. Tons of information out there on finances online, and certainly the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So with that, I want to thank you for your time this morning and encourage us all to lean in when it comes to talent retention and own the process and design out a process that meets the business needs of your institution. Thank you.
What an amazing presentation, very thought-provoking, very insightful. And as someone that does hiring of talent, what you said was spot on with so many things, even in higher education, the length of time that it takes to fill a position. We do have a few questions. The first question I'm going to ask is regarding the retention at the government level. It says, why is government retaining 18%, and what are they doing right?
So that is a great question. The research would suggest that, generally speaking, those who get into certain types of government positions and or roles tend to find that not only does it align with their outcomes and their professional certifications, but oftentimes it can be the level of benefits that the government can provide. What I will share with you is on the private sector, what we found is when you take a look at, just I'm using this purely as an example, healthcare benefits and the options that are available on the private sector, many of those businesses have to go to market. That means they've got to go out and be a part of consortiums or deal directly with a healthcare provider to negotiate those rates. And depending on the size of those organizations will also dictate the outcomes of those rates. But when you look at it on the government entity side, the numbers are generally going to be much larger. So their buying power is much greater. And there's an opportunity then to minimize the impact, if you will, of premiums for their employees. Some of those employees, in some of the surveys that I read, they also are very much focused on the retirement plan. And so it's an opportunity, depending on the nature of the government sector and the job that you sit in, you could put in 25 or 30 years and you're grandfathered in and automatically automatically qualify for retirement benefits. So that's what we've seen. And let's just face it, I'm certainly not in the government sector, but what I will tell you is, in having conversations with a few, there's a little bit of a safety and security component, given the nature of some of the roles and the requirements that are needed to service the community, we don't see them going away.
Mhm. Thank
But
you.
good
Along the
question.
same, that was a good question. Along the same line, someone asked about the influence of the average age. Do you think the government retention is also related due to the average age?
I would offer up, yes. I do think that that is a factor. I think what we're finding right now, both on the government side and certainly even in the private sector, there's this thing called social media, and
Mhm,
it's creating new career options that the Gen Z and even Gen Y are taking a look at. And for those
mhm.
that are following the generations, now there's Gen A. So we're back to the alpha generation. They're not eligible to come into the workforce yet, by the way. But once they are,
Mhm.
it's going to change the dynamics again.
Great. So many wonderful comments in the chat. One that was intriguing was regarding the stay interviews. So would like to ask a question regarding what culture do you think is most supportive to get an authentic response to the stay interviews?
You know, you have to have an open, receptive culture in the organization.
Mhm,
Let's just face it, if you want to have candid dialogue, you have to be able to create an atmosphere and an opportunity for the workforce to be able to
mhm,
provide a true, unbiased response and feedback.
mhm,
And what I have found is it generally starts at the top of the house, but it also transitions down to the front line.
mhm,
So these stay interviews, some may have heard of them, some have not. And what I will tell you, it is absolutely cutting edge conversations, because what we're doing is we're removing filters and we're sitting down with key talent.
mhm,
The best organizations and companies out there executing on the state interviews, actually, these interviews are not taking place with a human
mhm,
resource professional, and they're not taking place with that individual's immediate supervisor. It's
mhm,
usually taking place with a mentor or a coach that is a part of one of those retention strategies or programs that are
mhm,
within the organization. So if you can think about how you meld those two things together, if I find value in a key position or a person in the organization, and we have instituted a mentoring program at our company, I'm going to impress upon that mentor to make certain that they're also inquiring on how we can maintain and keep that individual. And if they're doing their part in this program and in this process, they're gaining insightful information and feedback that can help direct that organization going forward without, in some respects, having to reveal immediately who that frontline employee is. In most of these internal mentoring and coaching programs, a mentor can have anywhere from 3 to 5 individuals. So that's where I'm finding, and that's what the data and the research would suggest, is those
mhm.
state interviews conducted by an internal coach or mentor are actually ranking higher than having them conducted by a human resource professional or a senior leader.
Thank you very much. There's another question. Are there any recommendations for getting candidates to apply in the first place?
That's a great one. You know, when we talk about just attracting candidates to your organization, I will tell you there was one word in that talent management system strategy, and it's ambassadorship. When your current employees are out there being positive about who you are and your organization, let's just face it, they're your biggest referral source. So when you can create positive momentum with your existing employee base, that attraction of talent, the work is already done.
Great, thank you. The next question has to do with continuous education programs. What types of continuous education programs are available? I know you mentioned some with Franklin University with the micro-credentials and certificates, and but what other ones do you suggest?
Yeah, so what I'm finding again is depending on the nature of the industry that you are in, there may be certain educational requirements or continuing education components that you may have to live into. And so certainly your organization needs to be able to provide that. But let's talk about things like Toastmasters. Let's talk about opportunities where people can learn PowerPoint, Excel skills. Let's talk about public speaking, and not just even in Toastmasters, but in other avenues. Let's talk about opportunities where your employee can go back and get their associate's degree. They can go back and get their bachelor's degree. There was a period in time when even a number of companies would offer tuition support for those who wanted to go on and get a master's degree, a special designated degree, or even in some cases, a law degree. So you've got to find avenues and ways in which you're going to be able to retain talent via that educational support. If you don't, someone else will.
Amazing. Thank you for that response. Here's another question. How do we fill the gap in those industries and positions that require degrees or technical knowledge with the new trends between soft skills versus the hard skills on candidates?
You know, that could be a whole nother 30-minute.
That's a whole nother presentation topic.
You know, this is just Oyama's perspective on this, and very candidly, I think a lot of it comes down to the support. I'll use the insurance industry, for example. In the insurance industry, they were actually looking at a significant chasm between the last generation, and we'll call them Generation X / a little bit of the millennials, to Gen Y. And they saw this chasm growing in the sense that very few people fully understood all the career paths and options that were available in the insurance industry. All they saw were the commercials on auto insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, not realizing that the insurance industry can offer careers as an entrepreneur, in law, whether it's as a lobbyist or working on legal teams, whether it's wanting to be in leadership as a manager. They even hire healthcare professionals. So the vast span of career options that are available in the insurance industry has now forced and required the consortium of insurance leaders and companies to now go back to what we call the basics. And the basic is not to just go to high school, but to go to middle school and even elementary school and make these careers visible so that the next generation coming up can eventually see themselves wanting to pursue this as an option.
That's really nice. You know, that's very true. I once had a dialogue with insurance company, someone from an insurance company, and they kept saying, we're a tech company that sells insurance, but we're first a tech company. Changed the whole landscape of our conversation. So thank you for sharing that about the changing landscape of the insurance company. Someone asked a question of how long is the continuous education process?
Oh, wow. So continuous education, when it comes to the employee, it should be in perpetuity. As an employer, you should always offer up options to keep your individuals and keep your team sharp. Let's just face it, times are constantly changing. Some of you might remember when we would connect to the internet via dial-up. Well, that's no longer the case. Some of you went out and you bought DVDs. Well, now everything's online. So we're constantly evolving as a society, and the skill sets that are required to be able to maintain that communication with customers, to maintain some level of rapport, even within the workforce, is constantly evolving. So you have to stay current, and you have to stay out in front of it as best you can. And education, by far, is not going away and should not.
It's not. You're right. Someone asked a question about the what recommendation would you have for books, articles, or podcasts that are related to this topic? I know this is such a robust topic. Could you give a little bit on those?
Absolutely. What I can do is, I saw also in the chat, there was a request for the presentation. Absolutely, we can make that available. And what I will share is we'll include a list of a number of really good books in there and some articles that can help you around this entire component of talent strategy, talent system development, talent retention, and then most importantly, developing your policy relative to talent retention and even talent attraction. So we'll get that out to you.
Right, thank you very much. So what we'll do is Oyama will send that to us and then Franklin University Leadership Center, and we'll make that available to you as well. Jenny, would you like everyone that's interested in receiving this information to email us at the Leadership Center? Would you like that? Or would you just send it out to everyone? She'll just send it out to, Jenny has a really
Yeah.
bad cough right now, so you'll send it to everyone who registered for today's
Yes.
session.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we truly thank you. This is a topic that we can come back and present, but if you want to hear this presentation again, I'm going to invite you to look at the chat. We did put the link. Give us about a week or so, 2 weeks to get it posted, and this presentation will be available to you at that time. And as shared at the beginning, we would love to invite you to all of our sessions here at the Franklin University Leadership Center. Thank you once again for spending your time with us this morning, and have a wonderful day and Happy New Year.